The steam from the coffee mug made little halos around the glow of her computer screen. It was a Starbucks mug, the green one she'd taken from the office kitchen last year. Right where the word believe was printed on the side, someone had scratched a long, thin line with a key. Maya Patel ran her thumb over that scratch every morning, a weird little habit. It was 8:58 a.m. on a Tuesday, March 12th. Outside the window of the Hart Senate office building, Washington, D.C. was waking up under a pale, spring sky. Her desk was neat, a blue planner open to today, a photo of her mom back in Ohio, 3 black pens lined up just so. The bullpen was quiet, the way it gets before the day really starts. The smell was a mix of lemon cleaning spray, old paper, and the faint, sweet note of someone's breakfast pastry. Maya could hear the soft asterisk click-clack asterisk of her own fingers on a keyboard, finishing up the briefing notes for the 10 a.m. meeting. Then, a warm laugh cut through the quiet. Senator Thomas Walsh stood by his office door, 20 feet away. He had a laugh that filled a room, deep and genuine. He was clapping a hand on the shoulder of his senior assistant, Leo Brenner. Leo was holding a stack of files and a single, cream-colored envelope. He passed the envelope to the senator. Their hands almost touched, but didn't. It was a tiny thing, a split-second moment. Leo's knuckles were white where he gripped the files. Maya looked away, back to her screen. She felt a sudden, strange heat in her cheeks, like she'd seen something private. She took a sip of her coffee. It was bitter, because she'd let it sit too long. The scratched mug felt familiar in her hands. She'd been Senator Walsh's junior legislative correspondent for almost 2 years. He'd hired her straight out of Georgetown, seen something in her. He called her Kid, but in a nice way. He remembered her mom's name. Last Christmas, he gave everyone a bonus and a handwritten card. Hers said, "The future is bright. Keep up the excellent work, Maya." She'd taped it to the edge of her monitor for a month. To her, he was more than a boss. He was proof that good people could do good work in this messy city. The clock on the wall, a plain white circle with black hands, ticked over to 9:07 a.m. It started with a single, sharp asterisk ping asterisk from a phone nearby. Then another. And then, like dominoes falling, the sound came from every direction. Desktops, laptops, phones in pockets and purses. It was the sound of email alerts, a chorus of digital chirps that felt all wrong for the quiet morning. Maya looked at her own screen. A news alert banner flashed across the top. Asterisk asterisk breaking. Sources allege financial impropriety in Walsh defense bill. Investigation imminent. Asterisk asterisk. The words seemed to pulse. She read them again. And again. The air in the room changed. It got thick and still. The smell of the pastry from earlier now smelled sickly, like too much sugar. The cheerful lemon cleaner scent turned chemical. She looked up. Leo was frozen, staring at his phone, his face the color of ash. Senator Walsh was no longer smiling. He was reading something on his phone, his brow furrowed, his famous warmth completely gone. He looked confused. Then his eyes met Leo's. It was a flash, a fraction of a second, but Maya saw it. It wasn't a look of "what have you done?" It was something else. Something like panic, quickly buried. Then, the noise began. First, a whispered "oh my God" from the intern at the front desk. Then phones started ringing, not with email alerts, but with hard, jangling rings. The main line, the press line, all of them at once. The office, which had been a picture of orderly morning calm 2 minutes ago, became a hive of sudden, nervous energy. Maya's own heart was doing a funny, fast rhythm against her ribs. She placed her palms flat on her desk. The wood was cool and solid. She focused on that feeling. Asterisk breathe asterisk, she told herself. Asterisk just breathe. Asterisk. Senator Walsh straightened his tie, a sharp, deliberate motion. He walked to the center of the bullpen, his shoes making a firm sound on the tile. Everyone went quiet. All the typing, the whispering, the deep breath stopped. "Team," he said, his voice steady, but tighter than usual. "You've seen the alert. I have just seen it myself. These allegations are baseless. They are politically motivated nonsense. We have nothing to hide. Our work is transparent and honest. We will cooperate fully with any review, and we will be vindicated." He sounded sure. He looked them all in the eye, one by one. When his gaze landed on Maya, she felt a rush of relief. Of course. It was a mistake. A nasty political attack. This was Senator Walsh. He volunteered at the youth center. He remembered everyone's birthdays. "For now," he continued, "we stay focused. We do our jobs. We don't speak to the press. Direct all inquiries to Leo." "Understood." There was a murmur of agreement. Heads nodded. But the atmosphere didn't clear. It was like smoke hanging in the air after a fire alarm has stopped ringing. You know the danger might be past, but your nerves are still jangling. Maya tried to go back to her briefing notes. The words on the screen blurred together. She kept seeing that look between the senator and Leo. The cream-colored envelope. Leo moved quickly to his desk, right outside the senator's door. He started making calls, his voice low and urgent. "No comment at this time. We refer you to the statement. The senator has full confidence." Maya got up to get more water. Her legs felt a little unsteady. As she passed Leo's desk, he was hanging up one call, his hand pressed to his forehead. He didn't see her. He muttered something under his breath. It wasn't angry. It was scared. He said, "You knew, didn't you?" He wasn't talking to her. He was just talking to the empty air. But the words landed in Maya's stomach like stones. Asterisk, "You knew, didn't you?" Asterisk, who was he talking to? The senator? Someone else? She filled her glass from the water cooler. The water was very cold, and it tasted like plastic. She watched the bubbles rise in the bottle. When she turned back, Leo was staring right at her. His eyes were wide, red-rimmed. He looked terrified. And in that moment, it wasn't the look of a man wrongly accused. It was the look of a man who was caught. He quickly looked down at his desk, shuffling papers that didn't need shuffling. Maya walked back to her seat, the cold glass sweating in her hand. She sat down. The sun had moved, and now it was glaring off a monitor, making it hard to see. She adjusted the blinds, her fingers fumbling. The rest of the morning passed in a strange, slow-motion blur. Reporters began to gather outside the main entrance of the building. You could see them from the window, a small crowd with cameras and microphones, like a storm cloud forming. The normal office sounds, the printer, the fax, someone laughing, were gone. People spoke in hushed tones. They looked at their phones constantly, refreshing the news sites. Maya tried to lose herself in work. She confirmed the senator's lunch appointment for Thursday. She sorted constituent mail about highway funding. Normal things. But every few minutes, her eyes would drift to the senator's closed door, or to Leo, who was now a frantic, pale ghost of his usual calm self. At 11:30 a.m., the senator emerged. He had his coat on. "Leo, with me. We are going to make a brief statement downstairs. Maya, hold my calls." "Yes, sir," she said. He gave her a tight smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Then he and Leo were gone, heading for the elevator, toward the crowd and the cameras. The office was even quieter without them. Maya's co-worker, Ben, from the next desk over, rolled his chair toward her. "Wild, huh?" he said, keeping his voice low. "It's crazy," Maya whispered back. "You think there's any truth to it?" Ben asked. He was young, like her, new to all this. Maya looked at the scratched Starbucks mug. She thought of the senator's Christmas card, still in her desk drawer. She thought of his laugh. "No," she said, with more force than she intended. "I don't. It's a hit job." Ben shrugged, not convinced. "Leo looks like he's about to faint." That was the thing. Leo did look like he was about to faint. And that question he'd muttered. Asterisk, "You knew, didn't you?" Asterisk. The senator and Leo were gone for over an hour. When they returned, the energy was different. The senator walked in, his jaw set, a storm cloud in a suit. He went straight into his office and shut the door without a word. Leo looked worse. His shirt collar was rumpled, and there was a faint sheen of sweat on his temple. He sank into his chair and put his head in his hands for a full minute. Maya didn't know what to do. She felt a pull to help, to fix this somehow, but she was powerless. She was just the kid with the briefing notes. So she did the only thing she could think of. She made a fresh pot of coffee. The rich, warm smell of it brewing was a tiny piece of normalcy. She poured a cup, added a splash of milk the way Leo liked it, and walked it over to his desk. She placed it quietly beside his elbow. "Here," she said softly. Leo lifted his head. He looked at the coffee, then at her. His eyes were exhausted. For a second, the mask was completely off. She saw sheer, undiluted fear. And something else. Gratitude? Pity? It was gone before she could name it. "Thanks, Maya," he said, his voice hoarse. He didn't touch the coffee. She went back to her desk. The clock read 1:15 p.m. The day was only half over, but it felt like a lifetime had passed since she'd first sat down with her scratch mug and her bit of coffee. She looked at the photo of her mom, smiling in her garden in Ohio, a world away from all this. Maya had called her last night, talking about the weather, about a new recipe. Normal things. She wondered what the next phone call would be like. She wondered what tomorrow would bring. The first crack had appeared in the world she thought she knew, and now she could feel a cold draft coming through it, chilling everything it touched. All she could do was wait, and watch, and wonder what was on the other side of that senator's door, and what had really been in that cream-colored envelope. The story was just beginning, and already, nothing felt simple anymore. But even on the hardest days, even when the ground feels shaky, we learn that our own 2 feet can carry us forward. We learn to trust our eyes, our instincts, and the quiet strength we never knew we had. The truth has a way of coming into the light, and so does our own courage, when we need it most. The next 3 days were a kind of chaos Maya had never known. It wasn't loud or violent. It was a silent, creeping chaos that lived in the tightness of her shoulders and the constant sour taste in her mouth, like she'd been drinking old coffee for 72 hours straight. The main entrance of the Hart building became a fortress of microphones and glaring camera lights. Every morning, Maya had to push through a crowd of reporters shouting questions no one answered. Their voices blended into a single, angry buzz. She started using the loading dock around back, a dim concrete space that always smelled of diesel and damp cardboard. On the second day, a man was there, leaning against a brick wall, smoking a cigarette. He had a tattoo of a blue sparrow on the side of his neck. He didn't look like a reporter. He didn't ask any questions. He just watched her walk past, his eyes following her until she reached the service elevator. The doors closed with a slow, heavy sigh, and she finally felt like she could breathe. The office was a museum of nervous energy. The cheerful potted fern by the window started to droop, its leaves turning brown at the edges, as if even the plants felt the stress. People spoke in whispers, even about ordinary things. The sound of a phone ringing made everyone jump. Senator Walsh was rarely in. He was always in meetings, always consulting with counsel. When he was there, his office door was shut, and the low rumble of his voice through the wood was tense, sharp, not the warm laugh she was used to. Leo was crumbling. He moved like a ghost through the bullpen, his usually crisp shirts now wrinkled, a shadow of dark stubble on his jaw. He jumped at every sound. Maya watched him one afternoon, his hand shaking so badly he spilled a bottle of water all over a stack of press clippings. He just stared at the spreading dark stain on the paper, his face blank, as if it was the final, unbearable disaster. Her job became a strange performance. She still wrote briefing notes, but for meetings that were often cancelled. She answered emails from constituents who'd seen the news, crafting careful, neutral replies that said nothing at all. It felt like building a house of cards in a windstorm. On the third day, Thursday, March 14th, everything shifted. At 4 p.m., a terse email landed in everyone's inbox from the Senate Ethics Committee. It was a formal request for documents. A list. Item 7 on that list was, all internal communications and budgetary drafts pertaining to SB 447, the Defense Appropriations Review, from Q3 and Q4 of the previous fiscal year. A cold knot formed in Maya's stomach. She had worked on those drafts. She'd filed the early versions. She knew exactly where the physical backup files were kept, in Box 14, on the third shelf of the climate-controlled archive room in the basement. Senator Walsh called her into his office. He was alone, standing by the window, his back to her. The room was too warm, and smelled strongly of his sandalwood cologne. "Maya," he said, without turning around. His voice was tired. "The committee wants the SB 447 drafts, the originals from the archive. I need you to retrieve them for our legal team. Every page. This needs to be handled discreetly. Use the back stairs. Don't draw attention." "Of course, Senator," she said, her own voice sounding small. The archive room was in the sub-basement. The air there was 10 degrees cooler and smelled of dust and old paper. The lights hummed with a faint, high-pitched sound. Her footsteps echoed on the linoleum floor as she found the right aisle. Box 14 was right where she remembered. She pulled it down, the cardboard cool against her fingers. She set it on a metal table. She opened the lid. There they were. Manila folders, neatly labeled. She started lifting them out, checking dates. Her heart was pounding, a loud drum in the quiet room. This was evidence. Real, tangible evidence that someone was going to scrutinize. As she moved a stack of folders, a smaller, unlabeled manila envelope, tucked along the side of the box, slipped out and fell to the floor. A few photographs slid partway out. Maya bent to pick them up. They were not budget drafts. They were pictures of Leo. And in them, he wasn't alone. He was with a woman, their heads close together, smiling on a stone bench surrounded by lush spring flowers. The woman was Eleanor Walsh, the senator's wife. Maya recognized the place, the private Capitol Hill Botanical Garden, the one where the senator's family had a membership. The date stamp in the corner of one photo was faded but readable. April, 3 years ago. Long before Maya had started working here. The air left her lungs. This was a different secret. A personal, quiet bomb. This wasn't about numbers or defense bills. This was about a look between two people in a garden. A look of deep, private understanding. A look that explained Leo's terror, and maybe the senator's strange, controlled fury. Her hands went icy. What was this doing in a box of budget drafts? Who put it here? Was this what someone was really looking for? The ethics committee wanted the budget files. But someone else might be looking for this. The blackmailer. A reporter. An enemy. Her mind raced. The senator had told her to get every page of the budget drafts. He hadn't mentioned this. Did he know it was here? Was this the impropriety the news was hinting at? Or was this something darker, a secret used to control Leo, to make him take the fall for the financial mess? A sound from the hallway made her jump, the distant ding of the elevator. Someone was coming. Panic, sharp and metallic, flooded her mouth. She had seconds. Without thinking, driven by an instinct she didn't fully understand, an instinct to protect the fragile world she knew, or maybe just to buy time, she made her choice. She scooped the photos back into the unlabeled envelope. She didn't put it back in box 14. Instead, she looked across the room at the industrial shredder, its hungry slot glowing with a small red ready light. She walked over, her legs feeling like wood. She fed the envelope into the slot. The machine whirred to life with a sound like a giant insect. It gnashed its teeth, swallowing the images of the garden, the smiles, the secret. It was a deep, grinding roar that vibrated in her chest. Then, it stopped. The red light blinked. It was done. She stood there for a full minute, listening to the hum of the lights. Her irreversible choice was now just confetti inside a plastic bin. She had destroyed evidence. Not the evidence the committee wanted. Different evidence. The wrong secret. She returned to the box, gathered the correct budget folders, and placed them neatly into a fresh archive box. Her hands were steady now, eerily calm. She carried the box back upstairs, delivered it to the senator's waiting lawyer, a man with a very expensive watch and a frown, and returned to her desk. The office was emptying out for the evening. It was after 7 p.m. The sky outside was dark. She mechanically started cleaning her desk, trying to make things orderly. She emptied her wastebasket into the large central bin near the copy machine. As she turned to go, a small flash of cream color in the bin caught her eye. It was a torn piece of thick, expensive stationery, half buried under candy wrappers and discarded printouts. She picked it out. The fragment had just a few words on it, written in a smooth, looping script, asterisk, cannot continue to pretend. My feelings are not, asterisk. The handwriting. She knew it. She stared at it, her blood turning to ice in her veins. It wasn't Eleanor Walsh's handwriting. It wasn't Leo's messy scrawl. The swoop of the F, the specific slant of the Y. She had practiced that style for a college calligraphy class. It was asterisk her asterisk handwriting. Or a perfect, terrifying copy of it. Her breath hitched. She looked around the empty, shadowy bullpen. The chairs were pushed in. The computers were sleeping. It was just her, alone, holding a piece of a letter she never wrote, about feelings she didn't have. It was a decoy. The words Leo had muttered in panic on the first day echoed in the silent room. Asterisk, you knew, didn't you? Asterisk, he hadn't been talking to the senator. He must have seen this. He must have thought she was part of it. He thought asterisk she asterisk was the one planting secrets, writing letters, setting the trap. A wave of dizziness washed over her. She leaned against the copy machine, its glass cold against her palm. She had just shredded what she thought was the real secret to protect her boss. But the real game was something else entirely. Someone was moving pieces on a board she couldn't even see, and they had just used her own hand to write their opening move. The fear she'd felt for 3 days melted away, replaced by a deep, chilling clarity. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. Her choice in the archive had pulled her into the center of it. She had taken a side without knowing who the players were. And now, she had to find out. Because sometimes, the scariest moments aren't when everything falls apart, but when you realize you're holding the pieces of a puzzle you never meant to touch. The truth is out there, and it always starts with a single, brave step into the unknown. Even when you're scared, you have everything you need to begin. Winter came early to Washington that year. By late November, a hard, gray ice seemed to encase the city. It wasn't the pretty, snowy kind of winter. It was the kind that made the sidewalks slick and turned the bare tree branches into dark scratches against a pale sky. The investigation into Senator Walsh had stretched on for 8 long months, a slow drip of new stories and legal filings that had faded from the front pages but still hung over the office like a bad smell. Maya's world had shrunk. She went to work, she went home to her small apartment in Adams Morgan, and she tried not to think. The office was quieter now. Several staffers had left for other opportunities. Leo was gone, having resigned to pursue private sector interests back in June. His desk was empty, just a clean, blank space that everyone avoided looking at. One Thursday evening, just after 6 p.m., Maya was the last one leaving. The elevator was out for maintenance, so she pushed open the heavy door to the stairwell. The concrete steps echoed loudly. Halfway down, between the 5th and 4th floors, she stopped. The wall there was lined with framed inspirational posters about teamwork and integrity. Right in the middle was a tall, thin mirror, probably meant to let people check their appearance before important meetings. She caught her own reflection and froze. She saw a woman in a dark wool coat, looking tired. Her own face seemed unfamiliar, pale, and serious between the bright, cheerful posters. The woman in the mirror looked like a ghost. Or worse, she looked like someone who was hiding. For 8 months, she had told herself she was being loyal, she was being smart, she was waiting for the truth to come out and clear the senator's name. But the woman in the mirror didn't look loyal. She looked afraid. She looked complicit. This was her mirror moment. She wasn't the brave, loyal aide. She was the scared person who had shredded evidence and was now keeping a secret that could burn her whole life down. The cold from the concrete stairwell seeped through the soles of her boots and climbed up her legs. The impossible choice came 2 weeks later, on December 10th. It arrived in a plain, white envelope with no return address, slipped under the door of her apartment. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printed note, and a photograph. The note was short. It said, "Parking Garage C, Level B2. December 12th, 7 p.m. Come alone. Tell no one. If you don't, the attached goes to every major news outlet. Your choice." The photograph was a black and white image, grainy, taken from a security camera. It showed her, clear as day, on the night of March 14th, standing by the industrial shredder in the archive room. The timestamp in the corner was undeniable. Her stomach dropped into a cold, hollow space. Someone had been watching. The man with the sparrow tattoo. Someone else? They knew. The next 48 hours were the longest of her life. She couldn't eat. She slept in fits and starts, waking up with her heart pounding. She went to work, smiled at the senator, filed papers, and felt like she was moving through a thick, heavy fog. On the night of the 12th, she drove to Parking Garage C, near Union Station. It was mostly empty at that hour. Level B2 was a cavern of concrete pillars and flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. The air smelled of cold gasoline and old exhaust fumes. She parked her used Honda Civic and waited, her hands clenched on the steering wheel. At exactly 7 p.m., a dark sedan with tinted windows pulled up and parked 2 spaces over. The driver's window rolled down halfway. She couldn't see the person's face, just a shadow. A man's voice, low and calm, came from the car. "Get in." Passenger sighed. Her legs felt like water, but she made herself get out. The cold air hit her like a slap. She opened the passenger door and slid in. The car was warm, and it smelled of leather and mint. The man was middle-aged, wearing a nondescript navy peacoat. He had a pleasant, forgettable face. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like an accountant. "Hello, Maya," he said. "We have a problem. The ethics committee is getting close to the financial stuff. They need a conclusion. Someone to point to. We want it to be Representative Klein's office. A rivalry gone too far. You're going to plant a few suggestive documents in a shared server folder his staff can access. Simple IT work. You do that, and the photo of you and the shredder disappears forever. We all move on." Maya stared straight ahead at a concrete pillar stained with dried salt. "And if I don't?" "Then the photo goes public. You destroyed potential evidence in a federal ethics investigation. You'll be investigated. You'll lose your job, your career in this town will be over before it starts, and you'll likely face charges. And," he said, his tone softening as if he was doing her a favor, "we'll have to release the letters. The ones you wrote to Leo, professing your misguided feelings for him, and your jealousy of his relationship with Mrs. Walsh. The letters that suggest you were trying to frame him out of spite. The forged letters. In her handwriting. They weren't a decoy to confuse Leo. They were a trap for her star. You have a bright future, Maya," the man said, almost kindly. "Don't throw it away for people who wouldn't do the same for you. The senator has powerful friends. He will be fine. You need to think about yourself now." He handed her a small, black USB drive. It was cold and light in her hand. "The files are on here. Instructions are in a text file. You have until Friday." He looked at her, waiting for an answer. She sat there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 60 seconds. She watched her breath make a little cloud in the cold car air. She thought about her mom back in Ohio, so proud of her daughter working on Capitol Hill. She thought about her empty apartment, and the scratched Starbucks mug still on her desk at work. She thought about the senator's warm laugh, and the tight, panicked look in Leo's eyes the day it all began. If she said yes, she would be framing an innocent person. She would become the thing she was pretending to fight against. If she said no, her life, as she knew it, was finished. It was an impossible choice. "I need to think," she whispered, her voice raspy. "You do that," the man said. "But not for too long. Clock's ticking." She got out of the car. The sedan pulled away smoothly, its tires making almost no sound on the concrete. She stood alone in the buzzing silence of the parking garage, the USB drive burning a hole in her coat pocket. She drove home on autopilot. She made a cup of tea but didn't drink it. She sat on her couch in the dark, watching the headlights from the street below sweep across the ceiling. Her mind kept circling back to one thing. The garden photos. The ones she had shredded. The blackmailer knew about them. He had referenced Leo's relationship with Mrs. Walsh. How did he know? Only someone who had seen the photos, or who had put them there, would know. The only people who should have known were her, Leo, and maybe the senator. The senator. She thought of his steady voice telling her to be discreet. His confidence that this would all blow over. His ability to keep his powerful friends. The blackmailer's words. Asterisk, the senator has powerful friends. He will be fine. Asterisk. A memory flashed. The first day, the senator's face wasn't just angry or confused when he read the news alert. It was calculated. He had looked at Leo not with betrayal, but with a cold, assessing glance. Like a chess player seeing a piece that needed to be sacrificed. The warm, protective mentorship, the fatherly advice, the Christmas bonus. It had all felt so real. It had been the anchor she held onto while everything else swirled into chaos. She had shredded those photos for *Im star. She had stayed quiet for *Im star. She stood up and walked to her window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. The city lights twinkled, beautiful and indifferent. And then Maya realized the warm, protective mentorship was a lie. It wasn't a full-blown revelation with trumpets and lightning. It was a quiet, awful settling, like a stone dropping to the bottom of a deep, still pond. He hadn't been protecting her. He had been using her. Her loyalty, her trust, her perfect, forgeable handwriting. He had needed someone close, someone believable, to be the scapegoat if the financial scheme fell apart. He had needed a loyal kid to take the fall. The fear that had been her constant companion for months suddenly vanished. It was replaced by a clear, cold anger. It wasn't a hot, shouting anger. It was a solid thing, like the ice on the branches outside. It was sharp, and it was focused. She looked at the black USB drive on her coffee table. The choice wasn't impossible anymore. Saying no wasn't about giving up. It was about choosing a different path. The truth was, she had everything she needed, not to be a pawn, but to be a player. She had her mind, her knowledge of the office, and now she had nothing left to lose. And sometimes, that's the most powerful place to start. When you hit bottom, you find the solid ground of your own strength. You realize the only way out is through, and the only person you truly need to trust is the one staring back at you in the mirror. The anger that replaced Maya's fear was a quiet, useful thing. It didn't make her yell or slam doors. It made her very, very still. It made her watch. The ice on the branches outside her window began to melt in a late February thaw, and with it, a plan began to form in her mind. Not a wild, reckless plan, but a careful one. She would use the very thing that got her into this mess, her desperate need for a mentor's approval, as a weapon. She would give them exactly what they expected to see, a scared, loyal kid, falling in line. She started with small performances. At work, she let her hands tremble slightly when she handed the senator his morning coffee. She made a point of looking tired, of jumping when the phone rang. She asked him hesitant, worried questions about the investigation's progress, her voice laced with just the right amount of concern for *Im star. "Do you think it will really be over by spring, sir?" she asked one afternoon, her eyes wide. Senator Walsh would give her that tight, reassuring smile. "We are getting there, Maya. Your loyalty through all this hasn't gone unnoticed." The words, which once would have warmed her, now felt like a doctor tapping her knee to test a reflex. She was just giving him the expected response. She began to feed the blackmailer, the man in the peacoat, exactly what he wanted, morsels. She didn't plant the fake files on Representative Klein's server. Instead, she used the black USB drive they'd given her. She loaded it on an old, disconnected laptop and wrote a careful email from a dummy account. "The security on the target server is tighter than anticipated," she typed. "I need more time." Attached is a screenshot of the failed attempt. The screenshot was a fake, made with simple editing software. She sent it and held her breath. The next day, a reply appeared in the dummy inbox. Understood. Proceed with caution. New timeline, March 15th. She had bought herself 3 weeks. And she had learned something crucial. They were watching her digital moves, but they weren't IT experts. They were bullies, not hackers. She used the time to observe the office rhythms she knew so well. She noted that the senator had a standing strategy call every Thursday at 4 p.m. where he shut his office door and turned on a white noise machine, a small, beige box that hummed softly. She saw that his personal calendar, the paper one on his desk, still had little notes in his own handwriting. And she saw that he was growing more confident, more like his old self, as the investigation seemed to stall. He started telling his old jokes again. The sound of his laugh, which used to feel like sunshine, now felt like a door clicking shut. Her key insight came from the past. She remembered a case from her political science studies, a local election scandal where the fixer always met his contact in a place that seemed too public to be suspicious, a busy coffee shop. The best hiding place is in plain sight. She knew the blackmailer would want a final meeting, a way to pressure her in person before the March 15th deadline. She decided to choose the time and place herself, on her terms. She needed a stage where she could control the scenery. On March 10th, she made her move. She requested a private meeting with the senator for 8 p.m. on March 14th, exactly 1 year since the night in the archive room. She told his assistant it was to discuss a sensitive personal matter regarding my future with the office. It sounded like she was going to resign. It was the kind of meeting he would absolutely take, and take privately. She knew his study in the Georgetown townhouse was where he felt most in control. It was lined with books, smelled of old paper and brandy, and had a heavy oak desk. It was also where he kept his most private files. In a locked drawer she'd seen him open once, the key on his keychain. A grandfather clock stood in the hall outside, its deep chime marking the quarters of the hour. At 7:55 p.m. on the 14th, Maya stood on the sidewalk outside the townhouse. The air was cool and damp, smelling of recent rain and wet earth. Spring was a promise, not quite a reality. She wore a simple black blazer and slacks. In her pocket was a phone, and tucked into the inner lining of her blazer was a small, powerful voice recorder she'd bought with cash from a spy shop downtown. Its record button was already pressed. A tiny red light, taped over with black electrical tape, was invisible in the dark fabric. She rang the bell. The senator himself answered, which was unusual. He looked relaxed, his sleeves rolled up. "Maya, come in. Let's talk in the study." He led her down a hallway lined with framed photographs, him shaking hands with presidents, cutting ribbons. The study was just as she remembered. Leather chairs, a Persian rug, the big desk. The white noise machine was on its shelf, silent for now. He gestured for her to sit in the chair facing the desk. He sat in his large, high-backed chair, the king on his throne. "I got your message," he said, leaning forward, his face a mask of fatherly concern. "This past year has been hard on everyone. If you need to move on, I completely understand. No one would blame you." Maya let her shoulders slump a little. She looked down at her hands in her lap. "It's just the pressure, sir. The constant wondering. I got another message. A threat." His expression shifted, just a fraction. The concern deepened, but his eyes became sharper, more focused. "A threat? What kind of threat?" "About the night in the archives," she whispered. "They have a photo. They said if I don't help them frame Representative Klein, they'll send it to the press. And they mentioned letters. Forged letters." She looked up, meeting his eyes, letting him see her terror. "It wasn't hard to fake. I don't know what to do," I thought if I just kept my head down and was loyal, it would all go away. Senator Walsh sighed, a deep, weary sound. He stood up and walked to a small cabinet, pouring himself a half-inch of amber liquid into a crystal glass. He didn't offer her any. Maya, he said, his back to her. This is the ugly side of politics. People will try to destroy you to get to me. This Klein business, it's a dirty game. But sometimes, to protect the greater good, you have to make difficult choices. He turned around, leaning against his desk, now looking down at her. You planting a few files, it's a small thing. It ends the threat to you. It allows us to finally put this whole sordid affair behind us. Think of it as closing a loop. He was so smooth. He was agreeing with the blackmailer, but framing it as wise advice, as protection. He was giving her permission to become a criminal. But it's wrong, she said, her voice small. It's necessary, he countered, his voice losing its gentle edge. Leo made his choices. He got emotionally involved. He became a liability. You don't want to be a liability, do you, Maya? There it was. The first real slip. Asterisk, he got emotionally involved. Asterisk, how did the senator know that was the core of the blackmail? The forged letters about a jealous crush? Only someone who knew the contents of the letters would say that. The grandfather clock in the hall began to chime. 8 deep, resonant asterisk bonks asterisk that vibrated through the floor. As the last chime faded, Maya straightened her posture. The scared look didn't leave her face, but something in her eyes changed. She was done performing. A liability, she repeated softly. Like someone who might have seen a photo they shouldn't have? A photo of Leo and your wife. The room went perfectly still. The only sound was the faint tick of a smaller clock on the mantel. Senator Walsh's face didn't change, but a tiny muscle twitched near his left eye. He took a slow sip from his glass. I have no idea what you're talking about, he said, his voice flat. The photos were in the archive box, Maya continued, her own voice surprisingly steady. The one you sent me to get. Someone put them there. It wasn't Leo. He'd never be that sloppy. It was you. You needed a lever on him, in case the financial stuff ever came to light. You needed him to be the fall guy. And when the investigation started, you needed someone else to find those photos and get rid of them, so they couldn't be traced back to you. So you sent me. The loyal one. He placed his glass on the desk with a quiet asterisk click star. That is a very dramatic, and very foolish, story. The blackmailer knew about the photos, Maya said. He referenced them. Only 3 people could have known they were in that box and what they showed. You, me, and the person who put them there. I didn't tell him. So who does that leave? For the first time, a crack appeared in his calm. A flush crept up his neck. You are in way over your head, young lady. I know, Maya said. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm just tired of treading water for you. She nodded toward the white noise machine on the shelf. You should turn that on, sir. For privacy. Like you do for all your important calls. He stared at her, his eyes cold and assessing. This wasn't the script. The scared kid was gone. He slowly walked over to the shelf and flipped the switch on the little beige box. It began to emit its low, steady hum, filling the room with a sound like a distant waterfall. It was meant to drown out conversations from listening devices. He turned to face her, his mask completely gone now. His expression was one of cold annoyance, like a man dealing with a buzzing fly. What is it you want, Maya? Money. A recommendation. I want you to say it, she said. I want you to tell me the plan. The whole plan. From the beginning. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Or what? You'll go to the press with your little theory? You shredded the only physical evidence. You've been receiving blackmail instructions. Your fingerprints are on everything. You are utterly alone in this. Maya didn't move. She just looked at him, waiting. The hum of the white noise machine was the loudest sound in the room. He walked back to his desk, sat down, and steepled his fingers. He looked at her not as a mentor, not as a father figure, but as an opponent. Fine. You want the truth? You were perfect. Hardworking, naive, trustworthy. You needed a father. I provided one. And when the time came, you would take the blame for the forged letters, for the attempt to frame Klein. A jealous, unstable young aide, trying to destroy Leo for spurning her and then trying to sabotage a rival office. It was elegant. You would be discredited. I would be a victim of your actions. The financial irregularities would get lost in the noise. And it would have worked if you had just stayed scared. He leaned forward, his voice a low, confident whisper, sure the machine's hum was shielding him from the world. The cameras are off. There are no witnesses here. It's your word against a United States Senator. So, I'll ask you one more time. What do you want? Maya felt the weight of the recorder against her chest, a tiny, hard square of truth. She looked at the clock. It was 8:07 p.m. The meeting had just begun. She took a slow, deep breath, the air tasting of leather and lies. She met his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't look away. I want you, she said quietly, to listen very carefully to what happens next. And outside the door, in the silent hallway, the grandfather clock began to tick towards the next quarter hour. 17 months is a long time, and also no time at all. For Maya Patel, it was the space between one life and another. The autumn air that drifted through her open window was crisp, carrying the smell of dry leaves and distant coffee from a shop on the corner. Her new office was on the 7th floor of a modern building in DuPont Circle, all glass and light. It wasn't as grand as the Hart Building, but the view was hers alone. On her desk, a simple white ceramic mug held her pens. It was a gift from her small team at the non-profit transparency organization where she now worked. It was plain, solid, and didn't have a single scratch. Next to it sat a thriving potted spider plant, its green tendrils spilling over the edge, and a framed photo of her and her mom, smiling on a hiking trail in Shenandoah over the summer. She placed her keycard on the desk with a soft tap. The weight of it was familiar, but the feeling was new. This badge didn't come with a knot of anxiety in her stomach. It came with a quiet sense of purpose. The events of the past year and a half had unfolded quickly after that night in the senator's study. The recording she had made was not the only piece of evidence. The man with the sparrow tattoo, whose name was David, had been a private investigator hired by Eleanor Walsh. The senator's wife had suspected her husband's schemes for a long time. David had been watching Leo, and then Maya, not as a threat, but as a potential witness. When Maya finally reached out to him, a terrifying email sent the morning after her meeting with the senator, he had a treasure trove of his own documentation. Times, dates, financial trails. Together, with a good lawyer who believed in whistleblowers, they went not to the press, but directly to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. The scandal that erupted wasn't about a junior aide. It was about Senator Thomas Walsh, a conspiracy to obstruct justice, suborn perjury, and commit blackmail. The forged letters in Maya's handwriting were traced to a printer in a private library the senator frequented. The case was complex, but the evidence was solid. Maya testified before a closed grand jury. She saw the senator once more across a crowded federal hallway. He looked smaller in a regular suit, without the aura of power around him. He didn't look at her. She found she didn't need him to. The trial was still pending, a slow grind of the legal system. But Maya's part in it was largely over. She had resigned from her old job the day after giving her formal statement, a decision that felt less like running away and more like stepping out of a darkened room. Now, she worked with a group that helped government whistleblowers navigate the system. She answered emails from people who were scared, who had seen something wrong, and who had no idea what to do. She could hear the tremor in their words, and she knew exactly how that felt. Her advice was always practical, calm, and rooted in the hard lessons she'd learned. Document everything, find a good lawyer, and remember that your integrity is not a price to pay for your career. She took a sip of tea from her white mug. It was chamomile, with a little honey. Through her window, She watched the flow of life on the street below. People in coats walked briskly, carrying bags of groceries or chatting on phones. A yellow delivery truck double-parked, and the driver hopped out with a package. And then she saw him. A man walked down the sidewalk, his hands in the pockets of a lightweight jacket. As he passed under a tree, the dappled sunlight caught the side of his neck. There, just above his collar, was the dark ink of a bird in flight. David, the private investigator. His part in the legal case was done, too. He had been granted immunity for his testimony. He walked with an easy pace, not hurried. He didn't glance up at her window. He didn't look for her. He just moved through the current of the city, a free man on an ordinary afternoon. Maya watched him until he turned the corner and disappeared from view. She felt no anger, no triumph, just a quiet acknowledgement that his path and hers had crossed at a violent bend in the river, and now they were both flowing in calmer waters. Her phone buzzed softly. A text from her mom. Made your favorite pumpkin soup. Left a container in your fridge. Love you. Maya smiled, a real, warm feeling spreading through her chest. Her mom never asked for the scary details, only ever asked, "Are you safe? Are you okay?" And now, finally, the answer was a solid, unshakable yes. The scar from the whole experience wasn't something you could see. It wasn't on her skin. It was a deeper knowing, a change in her bones. It was the understanding that trust is something you build with actions, not with titles or warm smiles. It was the weight of knowing she had walked through a fire and hadn't been burned away, but had been forged into something stronger. She looked back at her desk, at the clean surface, the green plant, the photo of a happy day. It was simple. It was hers. The frantic energy, the fear, the feeling of being a puzzle piece in someone else's game, it was all gone. In its place was a steady hum of quiet work and the knowledge that she was helping others find their way out of the dark. She finished her tea, the warmth of it a comfort. The afternoon sun slanted across her desk, highlighting a tiny dust mote dancing in the air. It was just a regular day. And that was the most extraordinary thing of all. After the storm, you don't just rebuild the same house. You lay a new foundation, one you know will hold. You learn that peace isn't the absence of noise, but the presence of your own calm voice. And you realize that the greatest strength you'll ever find is the courage to start over, to build something true, one honest brick at a time.